welcome to Nostalgicast, your weekly roundup of the best and most up-to-date nostalgic news, where we discuss the stories and give our thoughts from a safe distance. From a safe distance.
Are you okay,
I'm Jan Michael Vincent.
Too soon.
I'm your host, who's terrified by how much the U.S. box office has grossed.
Oh gosh.
Andrew Price.
Hey.
The Omega Man, Tyler Palo. 28 Kelby Josephs later. And Dad Beats, a.k.a. Kirk Pinchon.
Dad Beats!
Wow.
Oh, you guys are sitting at home. What are you doing at home?
I'll show you. You can go first, Tyler.
We painted our bathroom, and then we took out all the sliding door fixtures on our shower and scrubbed all the grossness that was stuck under there because whoever installed it didn't do it right. And then we put everything back, and I learned how to caulk shower.
How dare you?
My streaming service?
Yep. DIYs brought to you by Ty on Cock.
Oh, sold. Greenlit.
Yep. Just on title alone.
Among other things, taking care of a toddler who's slowly losing his sanity, I wanted to show you guys the progress on this, and I'll show you guys next week. I'll show you how much progress I've gotten by then, and maybe I'll be done by then. Maybe it'll just be a 2-episode thing. But been working on this Gundam model.
Ooh.
The background blurring is messing up with it. It's not. Gotta put it on.
Damn it.
My
Who
level.
would have thought Kirk has the upper hand?
It's right.
God dang it! Hold on, I'm gonna unblur my background because it won't show you the details.
Cursed Andrew.
Okay. So I've been working on this Gundam model. This is the Gundam D Hell Custom Gundam Death Scythe H. It's a high grade quality Gundam model, and so here's all the leftover stuff that I haven't done yet. So here's all the pieces for the model here.
Oh, I thought you meant like you were done and that's all the leftover pieces. I was like, I don't think you did it right.
Well, this I finished it, and there's all these leftover pieces. I don't know what these are for. But yeah, this is what I have to do left. But I'll show you my progress on it. So far, I have the legs.
Woo woo.
These articulated legs, the knee bends, the foot swivels. I got 2 of them so far, and then I've got the arms. So
Nice.
I've got the arm has it bends and swivels at the elbow, at the shoulder. It's got this like blade thing on the shoulder here. It's got these arm guards, and then the little hand, and then the hand can open up, and one of the fingers can stay shut. So it's got those 2 points of articulation on the hand, and I've made 2 of those so far. So I'll show you what my progress is next week on this, which will probably be done because these things don't take that long to do. It's probably like a 5-hour project.
God damn it, Kirk.
How much that thing cost you?
That's Kelby's question.
Kelby's here hitting us with the economics of it all.
So Gundam models, or Gunpla, is a very, very popular thing, especially in Japan. But there's a lot of Gunpla builders in America. But in Japan, they have like tournaments and like big conventions where people go and they do these crazy custom. So it's like a super popular thing. There's a lot of them. There's thousands upon thousands of these different models. They've been around since the 80s. Every year they improve the technology of them. They make them more kind of complex and they moved away from having to use glue and things like that to put them together. Now they use just like plastic friction and like really good engineering in order so all the pieces can just kind of snap together. And there's different grades. So there's this is a high grade, which means it's like there's like the basic grade, which are like really simple, really easy to put together ones. There's the high grade, which are like the most popular ones, and they're like fairly complex, but they're still like relatively doable. And then there's like master grade, which were like even more complex, and they're even harder to make. The high grade ones, they all cost about $30. So I think this cost $30.
Are you okay with that, Kelby?
Some of these perfect grade and some of the really crazy ones, they can literally cost like $1,000.
And is it like a puzzle? Is it like a puzzle? They tell you what to do, or
yeah, there's instructions, and basically at the end of this, so it's all little pieces like this. So you clip these all out and you shave off the little excess plastic pieces, and sometimes you sand them down. Like if you really want to get it perfect, you can sand down the pieces, and then a lot of people still like paint them and things like that, do custom paint jobs. But you go through step by step with a little instruction manual, and you put all these pieces together to slowly build the parts, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, it'll look like this, and it's basically like a fully articulated action figure that you built.
Not worth it.
I mean,
What?
That looks
I'm not
like
saying
so
anything about
much
it.
work. It stresses me out just seeing all the little pieces. Stresses me out.
Well, the thing is like, I mean, in my opinion, it is worth it. Like, just alone, to get the end result, these figures are really cool. Like these Gundam models are like really cool with how detailed they are and how articulated they are, and then the added bonus of like you built it. But secondarily, I would argue that, and your son should
He was
know.
interested in it. He was like, "Wow, what's that?"
He used to not be a poser.
it is.
You just got called a poser.
He was into manga and anime and stuff like that before he decided to, get too old for it and try to sell off his stuff.
Is he bullying me because I don't know what?
Yeah, he's bullying you in your non
Anime?
your non-anime ways.
I'm gonna cry.
But
Bring out all my manga, and you just show it.
Don't.
No, it's okay, man. Big
Kelby
Tough
hitting
Man
you with the
can cry
toxic
too.
masculinity.
Yeah.
He ran upstairs crying. It's just, that's a lot of work, and just all those little pieces like stress me out.
Well, what I was gonna say is,
Man.
while I do personally think that the end result is worth it, I think that for most people, the end result, or like the actual toy, isn't really the point of it. Or I mean, it is the point of it, but like, if you don't enjoy building it, then you probably aren't going to. It's not going to be worth it to you. But
yeah.
the people who build these, like they enjoy the process of building them. It's therapeutic.
Yeah, that I can see for some
really,
people.
and really calming to sit here, like, because that's like for me, like, aside from the fact that I was trying to build it with Ephraim and he was just running around, not really helping me, also like climbing all over me, like grabbing the pieces and trying to like take them off or whatever, like that part was a little bit stressful. But if I was sitting there doing this by myself in isolation, I find building these things very therapeutic and very satisfying.
Okay.
how big are they? It's like the size of your arm.
8
No,
feet.
I mean there are ones that are that big. There are ones, like some of the more expensive ones that are like the higher grade. Like they can be like really big. Like I mean, it's hard to give scale over like a Skype call, but they could be like the size of, can't even think of, like a baby, I guess. Like it's like the size of like a baby, like a really big statue model that has articulation. These ones, the high grade, they're about this tall. They're the size. They're the height of like this bottle. Like it's probably gonna be like a little shorter than the Bane voice bottle.
You know what? There's something for everybody out there. You know what I mean,
That's true.
I mean, there Gunpla is a massively successful industry in Japan. Oops.
I love the applause.
I've been making beats.
Oh yeah.
Here's some.
I made
Talking about it, but I want to hear something.
7 or 8 beats since we've been quarantined.
Wow.
I'm gonna drop a beat and see if it works.
Debbie.
This song is called "Ill."
What is it called?
See if this
Yeah,
works.
set the mood, Kirk.
Set the mood about what?
With the
On this
name.
track, you got to give us the name. You got to give us the headspace you were in when you.
It's called.
when you.
It's the song is called "Ill." My headspace was I'm bored.
Nice. Okay.
All right, here we go.
I'm there.
You get bored?
Not when I do my beats. All right, here we go. This is a premiere.
Kirk is doing his beats to stay from being bored. I'm doing my beats.
No, what?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Sitting with Nostalgicast, talking about the past. Why we gonna go when we gonna see past our sight into our night of delight. We talking about stuff that we
Cowbell.
might just might like. Can you go for that? Can you not? Is it hot? Is it not? Is it gonna brought you to your childhood ways? Are you gonna go and watch it for days on Disney Plus? Is it the business? And when you talk about it, what would you witness? Would you see something
Wait for
from
it.
the past coming to the present, and then you gonna eat some roast pheasant?
Real pheasant.
Oh.
Wow, that sounded like
This is going to sound like a compliment, but then it won't come out like a compliment from you.
no, it could be in a movie. Like it sounded like a movie score. Like
Oh,
a real, like
no, that is a
you know when
compliment.
yeah, like
I would say a trailer score.
I don't know about the trailer, but I hear it as like when the kids are like when they're like, let's go do it, and then they start preparing all the things that they're like about to go do. So it's like
Yeah, it's the
and then,
prepping montage.
yeah, there you go, prepping montage.
That was ill.
Yeah. Oh boy.
No, the song.
Oh okay.
Was that name in any way like an ironic reference to?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was trying to be clever,
Yeah.
Okay.
purposely.
So let's get to these stories. We got a nice little thematic run of stories here that kind of just paint this rich tapestry of the timeline of this this global pandemic that we've been going through, how it's affecting the U.S. economy, pop culture specifically.
Burn
So-
it down.
The weekend box office has hit 0 for the first time in 26 years. A lot of people are reporting that it's hit 0 for the first time ever. But I did do a little digging, and as sexy as that headline is, I did a little digging and found out that it's technically not true. Technically, the box office has hit 0 before during the 1994 Northridge earthquake. And I don't know
Across
why.
the world? Or across
Yeah,
the
I don't.
country?
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah, that's weird that one area would cause 0 nationwide dollars.
Yeah, I read about that. I don't understand what that is. But so the domestic box office has hit 0 for the first time in 26 years. The coronavirus pandemic has forced theaters all over North America to close their doors. Last Wednesday, there were only 400 theaters open out of nearly 6,000, and now there are less than 300. As a result, there's been a surge in. I don't want to talk about this because this is a story for later. But those are pretty hard. Blah 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 blah. Skipping that because it's a story for later. The last time this happened was in the winter of 1994. Disney was the first major studio to announce they were done with box office reporting for the time being. Their statement read, "Given the current large number of theater shutdowns around the globe, Disney will suspend global weekend reporting for the time being." They then wished everyone well. From there, all the major studios followed suit and ceased delivering box office numbers. Measurement firm Comscore had this to say in a statement. "Due to this unprecedented situation, Comscore will be temporarily suspending our usual Sunday North American top 10 estimates, global chart, and commentary. We will update the status of studios reporting on Monday." So $0.
I just realized that the Northridge earthquake was winter of '94, is what they're
Yes.
saying. So winter of '94, there was a huge winter freeze for like the East Coast and the Midwest, and I was living in Chicago at the time. And at that time, it was Arctic temperatures in Chicago, meaning the wind chill was so bad it was like 30 to 40 degrees below zero, and that was like all through most of the Midwest. So I think that might have something to do with it as well. And I remember being so cold you couldn't go out, and yet we were still like, at least we don't have an earthquake.
Yeah,
But,
so it must have been just like a whole apocalyptic coalescing in that time.
Yeah.
And I read about
exactly.
that the Northridge earthquake, that it said that it heavily impacted Hollywood, that they had to shut their doors completely. And I would imagine that with it being in the 90s, whereas today everything is on the computer or on the internet, like they had physical cans and things that they were, I'm sure flying out to theaters and things like that. And the epicenter of these movies are coming from Hollywood. I could imagine them being like, all right, we need to slow down for a second. Because, I mean, it is right there. It's only 20 minutes away from
That makes
Hollywood.
sense. It only affected California, or Northridge specifically, in outer lying cities. But the fact that all the studios are in Hollywood, it kind of just shut everything down from there.
Hollywood, Burbank, all that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy times. We talked last week about how this whole thing might just permanently impact movie distribution, and we could be looking at one of two scenarios. We could be looking at a world after this where like we've basically accelerated the death of movie theaters and everything goes streaming and movie theaters just kind of become a thing of the past, or we have a scenario where after the quarantine is over, everybody is just so desperate for getting out and having social interaction that they start like going to things like the movie theater in droves. We start seeing way more people in parks and way more people at movie theaters and way more people whatever, because people are just craving social interaction after the isolation.
Here's an
the
interesting
rappers out-
question. Oh, sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
I was going to say, Chance the Rapper is calling out for people to go to movie theaters when the quarantine is over, because he said he doesn't want this to be the end of movie theaters. It's something that he loves to do. It's something that he loves to go to in Chicago. So he's hoping that everybody post-quarantine chases after the movies in the movie theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that it surprises me to hear Chance the Rapper saying that out of nowhere as somebody who's not involved in the movie industry necessarily. I mean, he's done some movie stuff, but there's a lot of people saying similar things, like directors and things like that. Like Christopher Nolan has been talking about that. But I'm also not surprised because Chance the Rapper, he basically like single-handedly saved SoundCloud.
I don't believe that.
Well, like SoundCloud, it was like filing for bankruptcy, and they were gonna
Yeah.
they were gonna shut down, and then he was just like, "I'll take care of it," and then like
Yeah, with the
SoundCloud
phone
just kept-
call. We
Yeah.
believe
Wait,
that.
did he pay money to stop them from
No.
going bankrupt?
So what
Yeah,
happened
so not
was they were
single-handedly then.
they were like, we're gonna file for bankruptcy, and he called them, and literally 10 minutes after the call, he was like, "It's all good. SoundCloud's been saved," and everyone was like, "Chance the Rapper saved SoundCloud."
He's like,
But
I fixed it.
Yeah, and it was like a 10-minute conversation. But what ended up happening was the owner of SoundCloud essentially just said like some of their investors were pulling out because they didn't make any money. And with that phone call, it gave them some added press, and the investors were kind of reignited to want to invest back in SoundCloud.
Gotcha.
One of the things I was curious about
So he did have an impact.
I
though.
mean, that's a heavy impact.
It's a semi-heavy impact. But wait, my question is, I'm wondering if, like, say that happens. Say, we're let loose. People are like, we're good. Go do things. Go be out. You're safe. Does streaming dip? Do people go, you know what? I'm so sick of streaming. I was streaming a lot before we had to quarantine. I was streaming during quarantine. I'm done. I'm taking a huge break. And I wonder if numbers dip for all the streaming services.
Once upon a time, I was streaming a lot. Now I'm only going outside.
I watched the movie yesterday in the streaming thing on Hulu. I watched the movie on Hulu yesterday, and I wish I could have watched it in theaters. I wish I could have watched it in theaters. Big Time Adolescence.
That was a good movie.
Oh,
It's
I heard
a
that's
very
good.
movie.
Yeah.
It's very good. I liked it a lot. But, it kind of took me out of my element because I don't normally watch movies at home. So when I watched it yesterday, I'm surprised I didn't fall asleep. But I watched it and was just like, dang, man, I wish I could
What did I say, Kelby? What did I say? Adaptation.
Yeah,
That's
watch
one.
Adaptation. That's
Nicolas
one of Nick Cage's
Cage
best
playing
movies.
twins.
I'll think about it. It's not like I've never
Meryl
watched a movie
Streep
at
makes
home.
out with
but
a toothless dude.
Chris
it's
Cooper.
crazy.
Chris Cooper.
Yeah, Chris Cooper.
Yeah.
Chris Cooper.
About-
Yeah, I mean, I actually really appreciate the obviously. Well, I mean, I feel like this is a very relatable situation for a lot of people. This really doesn't kind of affect you guys or even Kirk because your kids are older. But for me, it's like the fact that The Invisible Man came out early on streaming, like that's actually would be my only opportunity to even actually watch that movie because I can't go to the theater and see.
Oh
that.
yeah, you would never see that if things were normal. You just never get around to it with toddlers. That would never happen.
So I'm actually being given the opportunity to see certain movies at all in the first place with this whole thing.
So you don't want to go back to the movie theaters?
I mean, probably as much as I was before, which was never. Like it costs like $100 to go to the movies because you have to pay the 20.
No, but let's say your kids
40,
are a little older,
Yeah, I mean, I love going to the theater. I would, I'm like a special case. I'm like a hybrid because I watch a ton of stuff streaming and I love watching things at home, but I also love going to the movie theater. So before I had kids, I did both quite frequently. Like I definitely, whenever I had Movie Pass the first time around, not the time before whenever they went to $10 a month, but before that, before they got really big, when they were $30 a month, I had Movie Pass, and I got my money's worth. I saw like 3 movies a week, literally.
Me too. I would watch more than that. When I had Movie Pass, I worked in Anaheim, so to avoid the traffic, I went to the movies every day, 5 days a week after work.
Yeah, I mean, I would
That's what we were doing,
in certain scenarios, I would totally do the same thing. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like it's just insane that the number was just literally 0 for the weekend.
I know who can save the box office. Robert Downey Jr. returns as Iron Man in Spider-Man 3 or 4, whichever.
Oh well, we'll talk about that a little later. But first, so we're talking about movies, and we've talked about the impact of the coronavirus on movies. But and that's obviously like kind of the dominant genre in the United States. But there's another genre that is arguably, I mean, we're talking about like the possibility of movie theaters going out of business and how this is going to impact things. But ultimately, like I think movie theaters will be okay, and certainly movies are going to be okay. But there's another industry that's being heavily impacted by this, and it is
Porn?
This is a scenario where possibly like this entire medium could just go away. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit, but rather than just me talking about it, I figured I'd invite an expert field
Field
to,
of porn.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about porn.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're set.
Famous porn guy.
Yeah. Here's
Famous-
my friend, famous porn guy Dave Baker.
That is the
Baker.
greatest intro I've ever gotten. Thank you.
Yes. So I wanted to bring Dave on to talk about this a little bit more eloquently than what I could. So basically, the story, which it's similar to the movie theater story, except for it's an even crazier impact on the industry than movies, because of the fact that like this industry already kind of struggles even before any of this happened. So basically, the story is that the main distributor / the only distributor for comics in the world, right, Dave? The world?
Just
North America. The main distributor for comics in North America has just shut down. Like, they are no longer distributing comics. And I've definitely seen a lot of people talking about this. I have, I am on email lists of comic shops that I go to that are basically sending weekly emails being like, this might be the end of us and all this stuff. So it's definitely a scary time. And I figured I'd bring Dave on to talk about this because he has a little bit more insight into, number one, how this could be catastrophic for it, but number two, how it could potentially maybe be good in the long run. And I figured he could just speak to the nuances of that better than I could. So yeah, Dave, the Diamond.
Explain Diamond.
Yes.
Diamond shut down production. No more comics are being going out. Number one, what is Diamond? Number two, what does that mean? Number three, why is that such a big deal? And number four, why is there maybe a silver lining to it?
So one, what is Diamond? Diamond is the only distributor for what is referred to as the direct market here in the United States, which is basically if you ever go into a comic book store and you buy comics, you get them through, in air quotes, the direct market. Comics used to be available through newsstand distributors. That's how they started. And then through a long, complex bullshit scenario, there were a bunch of other distributors that popped up over the course of the ensuing 40 years. Then they all imploded in the 90s, and Diamond bought all of them up. So Diamond owns a monopoly on the distribution system for comics in North America to comic book stores. Obviously, you can still get comics at Barnes & Noble and bookstores, but that's a completely separate apparatus from the Diamond comic book store world. So I've already forgotten the 75 other bullet points. What was that? What was the next one?
Why is, now that we know what Diamond is, why is this a big deal that they've just shut down distribution entirely? We'll just go there. I'll just list them one at a time as we go along. Are you still there, Kirk?
Yeah, I'm there. That was my Skype is it just clicked out of my camera, but I'm back.
Okay. Anyway.
So why it's important is because there's now no means of distribution for basically what happened is Diamond said we're not going to ship any new comics for the foreseeable future. So they're not shipping any single issues of anything, which means that that is both a good and a bad thing. They basically did it as a cauterization move, because the way Diamond ships content is that it's all done on a non-returnable basis. So whatever the comic book stores buy, they own. If it doesn't sell, it doesn't matter. Whereas in the book trade, Barnes & Noble orders a ton of insert book here, and if they don't all sell, they can return them, so they're not just stuck with all this dead product. So the reason why Diamond shut down is because they're trying to help retailers not just get stuck with additional thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of bills that they're not going to be able to sell because nobody's going into comic book stores. So it's a sort of good thing, but it's also bad because now there's no distribution for comics in North America. So even if you wanted to get the books that were supposed to come out this week, you couldn't because they haven't been shipped to stores. So there's no way to gain access to them. And that is basically going to start a cascade effect where there's now these chicken and the eggs things where retailers have all these bills that they can't pay because they don't have content, but they don't have content because the distribution is shut down, and they don't have distribution because nobody's going into comic book stores, which is basically going to cause a shitload of comic book stores to go out of business. And that's not necessarily just, it's not like Diamond stopping the distribution chain is going to make all of these businesses go under, but they're not, they're intrinsically linked. So Diamond shuttering means they're not making any money, means they are just going to go under.
So it's altruistic to start. It's meant to be, their decision was meant to be like, we're trying to help you, but they don't know if in the end that's really going to help.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not completely altruistic. They're also like, we are trying to save all of our asses too, because we don't want to spend all of this money shipping everything and gaining all this new product because we can't sell it. You know what I mean? So they're not. Yeah. So it's not like they're being saints about it. They're trying to make the best out of a no-win scenario.
Yeah.
They're shutting down distribution because there's no one to buy the books, and because of that, it might basically capsize the whole direct market. It might not. I hope it doesn't, but it very, very easily could. Like in 3 months, there could be no comic book stores. It could be really dark.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's a synecdoche for the greater situation that we're in terms of the entire U.S. economy with the shutdown, where like shutting down everything and having people stay inside is the lesser of two evils. It's not a perfect solution that has no drawbacks. It is the thing that we have to do to stop the spread of the virus, but it's going to have a major, possibly catastrophic effect on the U.S. economy. However, in the case of the grander U.S. economy, we have trillions. We can produce trillions of dollars worth of bailout money for both businesses and U.S. citizens. Whereas, other than comic book stores possibly being able to opt into some of that business bailout situation, there's no money to bail out the comic book industry.
Yeah,
on its own.
There's just not. That's just not gonna happen. Like,
yeah,
it's just. I wish that it would happen. I wish that there were like governmental mandates about like literacy or the propagating of and promoting of the medium that I am somewhat biased to and think is the greatest artistic medium in the history of mankind. But that's neither here nor there.
We're gonna write a bill. The people they need the X-Men. They need the Guardians of the Galaxy. So we're gonna write a bill. It's gonna be a great bill, and we're gonna give trillions of dollars.
Those X-Men, they are a little different. I don't know if they should be publicized like that. They maybe need to be hidden away a little bit.
The Purifiers are good people. They're good people on both sides.
Those Sentinel ideas, I think I could get behind the Sentinel.
Boulevard Trask is a very good man. He's not being depicted in the media. There's dirty journalists.
So does this mean that there's going to be a way to monetize digital comic books? Like, does that mean that this new form of failure could be a new boom and success, a different way?
Well, that's kind of what Andrew was hinting at. Like, I don't know if it's digital, because there are ways of buying digital comics that exist currently. I don't know if there will be a massive influx of people transitioning to that format of reading comics. My gut says that there won't be, because most Americans like reading comics on paper. There've been digital comics for the past basically 20 years at this point. And
yeah, I mean, the idea of it, I mean, at least for me personally, I get a lot of comics digitally, but if I really like it, I have to buy it physically because it's just different. Like, it's different looking at it on a piece of paper than on a screen. Like, it's just like it's like an objectively better experience, to the point where, like, you can say that a movie theater is an objectively better viewing experience than sitting at home and watching it. And I think that to a certain degree that's true, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're both images being projected onto a screen with relatively the exact same technology. Whereas like looking at a book page looking at a comic book page on a digital screen is just a completely different consumption experience to looking at it on a book. So I think a lot of people who read comics, maybe casual readers, are more fine with reading digitally, but I would argue that there really aren't a lot of casual comic book readers. You either read comics or you don't.
Okay, so let me ask this question.
And people who do read comics want the physical books.
Let me ask this question, because you have said multiple times in the past that comics don't really make that much money.
Right.
Normally, whether the economy is good or whether the economy is bad, comics, at least on this side of the planet, is not popular enough for it to be a profitable business. So was this going to happen anyway?
Well, that is a good question, and there's two answers. There's the direct market comics, which are like floppy comics, superhero stuff. Those comics have a very hard time making money. You're absolutely correct. And that's largely because the publishers have been courting and making content for an aging fan base, right? They make comics aimed at a very specific patina of human who have been reading these comics for the past 50 years, basically. They make superhero comics that are this Byzantine maze of references and insider knowledge that is not necessarily welcoming to new readers. The other side of that, though, is that the book market right now has been doing a lot of young adult graphic novels, middle grade graphic novels, comics aimed at kids, and they sell like gangbusters. Like last year, Raina Tegelmeier's new book came out, and it was the top-selling book in the country. Not just comic, book. It sold like 85,000 copies in 5 days. That's like Harry Potter numbers. And so you're right that the industry around comics has constrained it and strangled it and made it very difficult for it to reach escape velocity and become profitable in a significant way. But that's kind of what Andrew was talking about, where it's like, if Diamond does go under and if the direct market does die, which I don't want, comic book stores are great, but is there a whatever comes after that, is it a good thing? Maybe. The direct market is really hard to break into. It produces content that is very insular, whereas the book trade has been doing graphic novels and comics that are applicable to everybody. And I think there's space for both. I think it's cool when things are weird and obtuse and artistic. I like that stuff. And I also want there to be like Pixar movies, but on paper. You know what I mean?
Question.
Okay, and then okay, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
And
Finish
speaking of Pixar movies on paper, I would highly recommend. I just reread it with my son. A book called Space Dumplings by Craig Thompson.
Is it about dumplings?
It's an intergalactic environmental space epic.
Okay. My question was just going to be, and I know Andrew somewhat answered this a while ago, but I just wanted to get a clear difference between the comic book and the book. You're saying, like, this lady put out the book, and it's one of the best-selling books, but is it a comic book, or is it...
Yes. It's a comic book, yes.
Are
you asking for the definition of, like, the difference between a single-issue floppy and a graphic novel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about what does floppy mean? What does that terminology mean?
It's just floppy is just kind of like a colloquial term to delineate the 22-page pamphlet that's released every month.
Is that the classic comic that we kind of associate comic books with?
Totally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a single issue, an issue, a floppy, a floppy is just like I said, like a colloquial term for it, a nickname. But to answer your question very specifically, there is literally no difference between a comic and a graphic novel other than length. And the reason why most Americans think that graphic novels are like more adult and more serious or more artistically valued and comics are for kids is because there was a panic in the 1950s where everybody thought that comics were brainwashing their children and turning them into maniacs and juvenile delinquents. And so because of that, there were mass comic book burnings. It was kind of like the video game scare in the 90s, where everyone's like, Grand Theft Auto, it's ruining our children's minds, or whatever.
Or like the Satanic Panic of the 80s, or in the early 90s when people thought that the Ninja Turtles were like evil or whatever.
Yeah. So comics used to be the dominant art form in America. Like all throughout the 50s, comics was a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is crazy because a billion-dollar industry in 1950 is like a trillion-dollar industry today. And because of that, all of society's ills kind of got heaped on the medium, and a long, drawn-out explanation could be given, but I'm just going to summarize it. Basically, there was a censorship board that got enacted and constrained the medium and turned it into this weird backroom thing that doesn't make any money and everybody thinks is for little kids. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, when they started making superhero movies, movie studios wanted to get away from that stigma, so they started rebranding comics as graphic novels, which is a term that had existed but was not used as frequently. And so thanks to things like Sin City or the Watchmen movie or any of these kind of like big adaptations of a comic, most people now, like, I can't even tell you how many times I've been at a convention and somebody's been like, "Oh, is this your comic? I mean, I'm sorry, graphic novel. And it's like, that's cool. That term's not real. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think the main difference between the two is just now in contemporary culture, it's just the method of distribution and the psychological context in most people's minds. For the reasons that you just described. Like, there are people who think that graphic novel is a different, more heightened form of art than a comic book, and they just go off of that preconception or that pretension. It's basically like the comics, like the single issue comics, they're in comic book stores, and quote unquote graphic novels, which are just like larger trade paperback collections of comics, or like single story comics that are collected into that are a larger, longer book. You can go into Barnes and Noble and find those. So it's really just where they are, like physically where they're located, where you can buy them, is pretty much the only difference.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like if movies were things that you could only stream on your laptop and films were only things that you could see in movie theaters. Like, there's like this weird divide where, because nobody really understands the medium, because it has been like, squirreled away in this back corner culturally for so long, the interchangeable terms, everyone's like, well, no, that's not interchangeable. Graphic novels are what I'd read in my college class, and then comics are what I give my kid on the weekend. It's like, all right, buddy, okay.
Got it.
I have a question. So, say shit really goes south. Like, worst case scenario, no more comic book distribution. Do existing comic books become way more valuable and people are trading those and buying those at a higher level?
No, I don't think so. Specifically because that stuff is usually based on scarcity. And the print runs that have been happening for the past 30, 40 years are so large that it's not like you won't have access to them, because the distribution only really would impact new comics, like, and I don't know what that means. Like, if Diamond officially goes under, if 66% of comic book stores, whatever that number is, go under, do publishers stop publishing in the direct market? Yeah, probably. Do they stop publishing, period? Does the medium just go away? I don't know. Maybe. I doubt that. Like, that just doesn't ring true. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Does it become like vinyl, where you're all of a sudden just like vinyl becomes the cool thing of buying old records? Now it's old comic books.
Yeah.
Because that's all there is.
Comics on vinyls now.
Yeah.
That's a thing, right? That's technology.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That would be interesting. I would love that. The issue being that even vinyl, the weird aspect of comics is that so many people interested in the medium are interested in the like fetishistic collector's mentality of like this is worth X amount of money, where the success of so many vinyl stores is just like look at this weird stuff that you didn't know existed and it's like $5. Okay, cool. And like there are some people who are very obsessed with limited printings and the LP and the record sleeve and all that stuff, but it's mostly still consumer grade. You're buying it to listen to the music in its best possible form.
Listen, Dave, if you want to get Pet Sounds, number one, you have to buy the 180 gram re-release. Number two, you get it in mono, not stereo, because in actuality, Brian Wilson mixed Pet Sounds to be in mono because he has poor hearing in his right ear, so he mixes all of his music to be in mono. So when you get a stereo edition, even though you think that's probably the better version of it, in reality, you're listening to a poorly remixed version of what is intended to be a mono mix of Pet Sounds.
Like perfect example. I would love for there to be a massive uptick in people just obsessed with like Ken Landgraf, Warriors of New York style back issues and like really into weird old things in comics, and not to try and sell them, but just like, oh, I really want to read, I don't know, the Jim Starlin Death of Captain Marvel and its original graphic novel printing because the colors are better and all reprint colors fucking suck. I would love that. If that happens, I'll probably kill myself from happiness because that's not the world we live in.
Wow.
Okay. But
a question about the industry itself. I learned from you, Dave, that even today, starting from when it really started back in Stan Lee's time, comic book artists and writers don't really have a union or anything that is secure to them to make sure they have the power to negotiate their rights.
Yes.
Does this especially bringing down the one company that distributes across North America, take power away from that big company to make the rules about what people have to do to distribute? And does it give the power back to the artists themselves to kind of come together as if it was a restart of the industry when it does pick back up? Do they get to make the rules and start a union?
That's a really interesting question. So it wouldn't necessarily impact the union aspect of it, but it would impact creators' rights in that the reason the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles exist is because during the 80s there were like 6 different distributors. It was Capital City, Pacific, Jeppy World, and like 3 or 4 other ones, whatever they are. And because of that, there were just a lot more comics being shipped out. And so Eastman and Laird put an ad out saying, hey, we're self-publishing this thing, and does anybody want to carry it in a couple of these different distributors? And then they got picked up by all of them, and basically based off of the heat of having all of these entry points into the direct market, they were able to do everything that we know about, turning it into a movie and video games and all of these different things. So if Diamond does go under, which it's currently not, it's not going under, it's just stopping distribution, which they're two different things. But if they did, like, let's say something crazy happens and the country doesn't reopen for another 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is, and they have all this backlog debt, and ultimately it ends up crushing them as a distribution company, which I hope it doesn't. But if it does, out of that wake, if there are multiple distributors that pop up, then yes, it would be very good for people like me who self-publish, or people, smaller creatives, because you would have the entry point into Diamond is very hard. It's very difficult to get your book picked up and distributed nationwide. You need a publisher. Basically, you can't do it by yourself, whereas you used to be able to.
Right. And I imagine you use a lot of creative control once you go under basically a monopoly of a distribution company.
Completely, 100%. Yeah.
My question has to do with, I guess, what could happen if this is perhaps Diamond they're crushed by all this debt and whatever, so they get picked up by Spectrum or AT&T or whatever. They get picked up and they just become a a subsidiary of one of these major companies. Is that positive or is that negative?
That's a good question. I think the likelihood of a major company like that picking up Diamond is pretty low. I'm not gonna say it wouldn't happen because we're like living in a George Romero movie right now, so who the fuck knows? But I think it's pretty low. And if it were to happen, yeah, I would say it would probably be fairly negative to really bad, because there's no incentive for a larger company like that to nurture loss leaders of small independent comics that are selling 500 copies or whatever. Like The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead's a perfect example. Walking Dead #1 sold 600 copies.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is because comics, like most movies and the big movies that carry the small movies that lose a lot of money, are these huge movies that are based off of comics or at least comic book characters. So wouldn't it be a great loss leader business for a company like Disney or a company like Sony or something like that to purchase it so that these comics can still keep coming out, and then they have content now that they can just switch over to a more profitable medium?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think instead of buying Diamond, though, I think what will happen is that Marvel or DC or a combination of the two would have their own direct to customer distribution platform. Like that's it. The reason why Diamond exists actually is because Marvel tried to do exactly that in the 90s. They bought a distribution company called Heroes World, and they were going to open Marvel exclusive stores selling comics and comic book paraphernalia, kind of like the Disney Channel store, if you remember those. Marvel was basically going to do exactly that, and then they mismanaged it because they bought a trading card company, a comics distribution company, and animation company like around the same time, and basically everything just bottomed out when the speculator bubble burst, and when Heroes World went under, then Diamond bought Heroes World and then bought Capital City because Capital City went under because there was nobody left to distribute. So that the consolidation of power has kind of already happened, and I don't really see it happening more. So the only way for it to kind of happen, I think, is for it to kind of like capsize and then go laterally again instead of vertically, with either a bunch of smaller distributors or Marvel having a self-distribution, DC having a self-distribution, and then a bunch of the indie companies getting together and forming like an indie distributor ostensibly. But also, what do I fucking know? I don't know.
I think it would be similar to something that's happened in the last like 6 to 8 years or so, where a lot of these smaller media companies have risen up and gotten really, really popular and established themselves as a potential valuable portfolio item. So you have like Nerdist or BuzzFeed or Refinery 29 or Geek and Sundry, all these different like media companies that have started up and like just basically sold themselves based on this idea, or Defy or any of these places that have sold themselves on the idea of like, look how big our audiences are and look how engaged our users are. And at the time when they were sort of like an independent company, they were doing very well for themselves. They were showing a lot of growth. And then over the last 5 years, all these companies have sort of been bought up by bigger subsidiaries. So, Legendary Pictures bought Nerdist and Geek and Sundry, and I forget who owns Refinery 29. It's like Condé Nast or something like that. And I forget who had owned Defy. But all these media companies basically just got bought up by all these bigger corporations. And then essentially what happened is over the next 5 years or less, the companies just started realizing what little of an actual asset these companies are. Like, they were doing well on their own independently, but as a part of a bigger corporation, as part of just one of their portfolio items, they actually weren't bringing in a lot of money, and they were sort of almost sold on kind of a lie, where these companies were like, look at the size of our audiences, but the size of an audience doesn't necessarily translate to revenue. I mean, it translates to some revenue, enough revenue to keep a small independent business running and growing, but it's a drop in the bucket for a huge corporation like Condé Nast or Legendary Pictures or whatever. So they bought these companies, and then they were like, oh, this is like trash. Like, and then now it's like Defy went out of business a year or so ago, or a couple years ago, whenever it was. And all these companies have just experienced massive waves of layoffs after layoffs. Nerdist and Refinery 29 and Geek and Sundry, all these places. So I think it would be a similar thing where I think these companies, these media companies make more sense as like a smaller, more independently run company, and I think that they can do well for themselves. But once you bring them into the larger infrastructure of a corporation, they're not actually as valuable to that corporation as the corporation was sort of like sold on. And I think a similar thing would happen with this, where if some company just thought it would be like, oh, we should buy up Diamond and own all comic book distribution. Like, that's got to be worth something, right? I think they would quickly learn, like, oh, this is more trouble than it's worth for us. Because that's kind of already happening a little bit, because AT&T owns DC Comics, and they're basically kind of wanting to sell it now.
Dave, buy DC Comics, dude.
Get on that, dude.
Bro, let's make some Batmans, bro.
Oh no, I hate
the
Batman.
Batman.
I don't know.
You don't want to go in on this? Come on, Tyler. Come on, man. I just need like a couple billion. That's it.
Yeah.
Got you, bro.
Yeah. I mean that. So yeah, I think that that was sort of broken down a lot more in depth than I would have done. So Dave, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah. Everybody should come listen to my podcast, which is called Deep Cuts. It's a podcast where me and my co-host, Andrew Price,
What?
we pick a topic and then we walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty gritty, so you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. We did an episode all about Sophia Stewart, the woman who claims that she created The Matrix and then sued the Wachowski siblings. We did one about the Stratemeyer Syndicate, which is a secret shadow ghostwriting cabal of authors who created the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and then received no credit for it. We did one about Tom Hansen, who is a San Francisco pizzeria owner who decided to make the world's first movie about the Zodiac Killer with the purpose of screening the film in San Francisco to catch the actual Zodiac Killer.
That's the latest episode that just came out, and it's a pretty fascinating story. It's a pretty crazy story.
Yeah. So if those things sound cool and you like Andrew and you think that I might be a cool person to hang out with, yeah, you should come listen to our show. It's called Deep Cuts.
Yep. And we talked for a whole...
Can we just change it to Dave?
Yeah, I'll eventually just stop. I'll just stop talking on the show. I'll just leave.
Yeah.
We talked about comics for about an hour. So is there anything else that you want to plug, comic related?
If anybody is curious about the comics that I make, you can find them at heydavebaker.com. I make a book called Fuck Off Squad. It's a coming-of-age romance comic. And a book called Action Hospital, which is like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind who meets Men in Black set in a hospital. And yeah, you can find those at heydavebaker.com.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for explaining that, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
I'll let you get back to
Social distancing?
Yeah.
Social distancing, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Bye.
Later.
Bye.
All right. So that went on for much longer than I thought it was going to. I'm surprised at how you guys actually had a lot of questions to ask.
Well, he's better than you.
Yeah.
I mean,
He also didn't clap. So
He also
Have fun
didn't
with
have
it.
a
Oh, well.
voice in a cup.
What?
I'm.
Yeah, I mean he wasn't
That-
recording with him. He wasn't recording with his own audio equipment, so I'm just going to use the Skype audio for him. Yeah, so a couple more stories to get through. So I kind of paused to talk about the comic thing, but to continue on the theme of the movie theater stuff. So continuing off of the fact that the box office hit 0 for the first time. Theater owners are angry because Universal has decided to release Trolls World Tour digitally first. So they've been released. Movie studios have been making the decision to release a lot of movies digitally very early, but this is the first movie that's actually being released digitally first before it ever goes to theaters. And a lot of movie theaters are freaking out because most other movies are being delayed. So there have been some movies that have been released early digitally, but they still had a little bit of a run in theater. And any other movie that hasn't come out yet, they've basically delayed it. So all the movies that were going to be coming out in the summer, they've all been pushed to like August or later. Tentatively, it might get pushed further if we're still, in lockdown. But this is the first movie where Universal is like, we're just going to release this digitally, not even bring it to theaters. And so this presents the first significant beginnings of a threat to the movie theater industry, where they're like, everything else has been like, okay, fine, release it a little early, we get it. Okay, fine, we got to push this because our theaters are closed. But this is the first time where they're like, wait a minute, you're just not going to put this in theaters and you're just going to release it digitally. So this represents a large threat, existential threat to the movie theater industry. So they're freaking out. John Fithian, chief of the National Association of Theater Owners, or NATO, says that yeah, it's called NATO. It's funny. I've always thought that was funny.
It's actually the same company. They do the
Yeah.
same organization, same shit.
Yeah, I used to work in a movie theater, and we have the little NATO notices at the front being like, if there's any issues you have, you can always, file a complaint or whatever. And it always struck me as funny that we have like signs outside of the theater being like, contact NATO if this theater is giving you a poor experience. Says that theater owners are bound to be mighty angry about this. He says, for all the movies that had been scheduled for release during April and May, every other distributor announced delays to later times, as I said. But they still intended to release those delayed movies theatrically. With one exception, Trolls, which will be released later theatrically, but digitally first. All other studios demonstrated their belief that the theatrical model is still essential to their business. They just had to delay release because of the virus. Only Universal and only on Trolls did one studio skip the theatrical model and go straight to the home. Universal continues to advertise to consumers that Trolls will be released simultaneously to theaters and home on April 10th, and they are lying to customers. Universal knows that theaters will be closed on April 10th, so unlike...
Bless you.
Thank you. So unlike every other distributor who must simply delay their release in that time period, but will understand the theatrical release is essential to their business model, Universal on Trolls didn't make that decision. Exhibitors will not forget this. Which kind of strikes me as funny because in the movie theater distribution model, exhibitors have very little power. Their business is entirely dependent on the supply chain of movies from studios. So studios kind of hold all the cards. So I can just imagine movie studios like kind of laughing at that and being like, "Yeah, sure, whatever you say, man."
Yeah.
as soon as everything gets reopened and we start offering you movies again, like you're not gonna say no.
Yeah.
That was.
I think it's
why they even brought it up.
It really makes me laugh too that because it's really the only thing that's available. They're mad about Trolls. That's the movie. That movie, they're like, we need that movie in it. I know the first one was a big hit. It just makes me laugh that Trolls is the movie that's.
It is funny that it's that movie specifically.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of hypothesized that maybe the reason why Universal is choosing that movie to do digital only is kind of an experiment. Like maybe they're just more willing to experiment on that movie. Like maybe they weren't really like expecting it to be this huge box office success, or they weren't putting a lot of their eggs in that basket. So maybe they were just more willing. Like Trolls to me feels like a good experimental movie for this, because it's like it's a movie that's gonna do well, and the the movies before it have done well. But historically, third movies in a trilogy just don't. There seems to always be a diminishing returns after the second one. Like the first one will do really well, the second one will do maybe better, and then there's always like a slight beginning of a diminishing return for the third one. So I think in their minds they're like, yeah, there's well that's a delayed sequel, which is a different thing. There are exceptions. I think Toy Story 3 did exceptionally well, but I would also say that's kind of a delayed sequel as well. But a direct third sequel that's like within the same span of like 5 years that the first two came out, they usually are a bit of a diminishing return situation at that point. So I feel like Universal might find this to be a good movie to experiment, where they're like, this is a successful franchise. We know that people are going to turn out for it, but we also know that this isn't going to be like the linchpin of our year. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with this. And if it does well, it could be a success. But if it falls flat, it's not a big deal, or it's not the biggest deal. But
as opposed to like a tentpole or something.
Yeah. It is funny that it's Trolls, but I think the reason why theaters are mad about this is really not about the movie specifically, but more about just the omen for what could potentially come that it represents. Just the fact that like
the setting of precedents.
Yeah, if they put out Trolls digitally and it does really well, and Universal's like, holy shit, like we made more money, or the same amount of money, or even like slightly less money, then maybe they say like, let's just start releasing everything digitally first.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine they would never. Once everything goes back to normal, I imagine they would never go first streaming. I imagine they would just continue to stream it while releasing it. In theaters at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a day and date. So movie theaters really hate day and date, and whenever movies are released day and date streaming with the theatrical release, the movie theaters they force the movie to four wall, which is basically the way that movies are distributed. Is that movie distributors sell packages to theaters exhibitors? So they say like, okay, so we have this package of like 10 movies, so these 10 Sony movies, and two of them are, well, let's say Disney instead. These 10 Disney movies, two of them are Marvel movies, which are going to be these huge hits, and then like three of them are like other like bigger ticket Disney items that are still going to do really well, and then the other, whatever, 4 or 5 or whatever of them are kind of like lower tier things that are not necessarily going to do that well, but you have to buy all 10 of them, and you sell them into distribution with the exhibitors in a package, with like a revenue split deal, where it's like, you get a percentage of the box office, and then we keep this percentage of the box office. That's the normal way that distribution happens. But whenever movies announce that they're going to be released day and date streaming, the theaters force them to four wall it, which is you have to buy the auditorium time. So if you're going to release a movie simultaneously streaming, then the theater is going to say, okay, well, you have to pay for every screening individually that you do for this movie. You have to pay for the time that it's going to take for that movie to be screened in this theater. And they calculate that time based on like estimated revenue that any one movie theater is going to get during a movie screening time or whatever. So you have to pay for that time to be in this auditorium for the hour and a half that the movie's going to be screened for every screening that you do. And then we split the box office ticket, and we get a higher percentage of the box office revenue And they're basically hedging their bets because in their mind they're saying like less people are going to come to the theater to see this because you're releasing it digitally at the same time. So it's a bigger risk for us financially to put this in our theater because we don't think people are going to come and justify the time that it's going to take to screen the movie for the real estate of that auditorium for us to play a different movie in it that isn't being released streaming. So in order to create an insurance policy for ourselves, you have to pay us for that time at the rate that we think is enough for us to break even for using that auditorium for that amount of time. And then everything on top of that, the box office is just gravy on top of that for us. So, you know, that's why a lot of people don't do day and date because there's a penalty for it. Otherwise, I think studios would have been doing day and date for years. Like, why not? Why wouldn't you release it streaming simultaneously? And the reason for that, the answer to that question is because movie theaters basically don't allow it.
There was an Eddie Murphy movie about 2012, if you remember that.
Yeah. But
Orbit?
Heist. No.
Just throwing names out.
No. It was like a heist movie.
Oh, Tower
with,
Heist. Tower Heist.
Oh, Tower Heist, the Ben Stiller movie. Not that great.
Yeah.
God damn it, that was a Matthew Broderick movie.
It's more of a Broderick vehicle. You're right. I apologize.
But yeah, it came out same day on. I think it came out on VOD. The same day it came out on in theaters.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they were forced to four-wall it at the theaters, which ultimately just costs more than the normal form of distribution. In related news, there was some speculation that Warner Brothers was considering releasing Wonder Woman 1984 digitally first, but that rumor has been dispelled. Wonder Woman, at least for the time being, has been officially delayed until August 14th of this year. So
It's wise. That's a $1 billion project.
Yeah, exactly. This is a much bigger risk for them to be like, we're just going to put this out on streaming.
It wouldn't make.
This ain't no Trolls.
It would probably make.
Do it.
It would probably make $250 million on streaming, and then eventually people would just rip it and put it on a website, and that would be that.
Yeah.
We know someone who would rip it. Who shall remain nameless.
I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's not a friend of ours.
What's the next story?
Whoa.
I'm not going to make the same joke by calling out a certain Twitter page that I usually make. Literally because I don't want to have to go in and do the work of editing it out.
Oh, yeah, when it was Todd's job.
Yeah.
It was all fun.
So a bit of a silver lining to this whole thing, which is just kind of a cool little thing, and certainly nostalgic, is in response to mass theater closings and social distancing guidelines, people are starting to go to... What?
Public guillotining?
Yes. Public guillotining is being instilled. And
It's
also,
fun.
people are starting to go to drive-in movie theaters in droves.
See?
Drive-in theaters have long been viewed as an anachronistic diversion, perhaps worthy of an occasional visit, if that. Now, though, several among the country's 305 drive-in theaters are experiencing a surge in interest as traditional movie theaters, theme parks, and other entertainment options are forced to close because of government advisories designed to increase social distancing during the coronavirus outbreak. In interviews with owners of drive-ins in California, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri said that they remain open, with several reporting increases in business in recent days. Operators said they were mindful of restrictions on large gatherings and would close if a mandate required them to do so. Ticket sales Tuesday at the two-screen Paramount Drive-In were at least double what they typically would be, said Bo Bianchi, whose family has owned the facility in Paramount since 1946. In all, the drive-in, which offered a double feature on both of its screen, welcomed 136 cars and sold 320 tickets. The family's neighboring 11-screen indoor Cineplex closed Sunday, but Bianchi said he expects business to continue to grow at the drive-in. It has been a welcome relief for families and adults looking for a little getaway from the house, Bianchi said. We've been trying to let people know that we have a safe environment and offer a little escape. So, yeah, I mean, not necessarily a salve for the major economic hit to the movie theater industry as well as the U.S. economy at large, but it's kind of a cool little thing. Just like, this little thing that you wouldn't think of like one of the little positive byproducts of this whole thing is that people are going to drive-ins again.
Yeah, which is interesting because, I mean, drive-ins were even before. Like, the last time I went to one, I must have been like 5 or 6. So this was like the mid-70s. And it was already kind of waning by then. And I don't remember what I saw. All I remember is like we went in our pajamas. The sound is, I mean, back then it was way shitty. Because it's just this little speaker that you attach to your car. And it pops and hisses and crackles. And you can't hear shit. So I'm sure it's much better now, but that's my memory of it. So if it has to be better.
It's kind of not. It's
kind of really? Not. It's like basically the same?
They have the same. Yeah, I don't think movie theaters. I don't think drive-ins like have the money to be able to upgrade their equipment really. So it's kind of like the same. Drive-in theaters. They have the speaker, like you can have the speaker and those still exist and it's basically exactly like it was. Or you can tune, they have a radio station and you tune your radio to it. But the radio station sounds just as bad. It's like not much better.
And you have to leave your car on, which is not wise. So, but yeah, it just goes to prove after a while, it doesn't matter how introverted people are or how they want to do things from home. After a while, you're just gonna want to do something else. Somebody that I live with, all she does is stay at home. But it's at that point now where they tell you can't do anything else. You can't go anywhere. You start seeing just like I'm ready to go do something else. That's why I just don't think that things are gonna make that immediate change to, hey, everything is gonna be from home. I just don't see it. As human beings, we desire to go out and be with other people or at least experience things with other people. Even if it's sitting in another room with other people, we do desire that every once in a while. And that's why sometimes as a parent, you can't say that since you've had at least one child, you never went to the movies. You were willing to spend that $100 here and there just to go experience something else.
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
What happens.
If anything, it becomes more of a coveted, fun experience whenever you can do it very rarely and it costs more. It feels even more kind of special and like a fun event. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love drive-in theaters. The most recent ones I've gone to, I saw Black Panther at a drive-in. And before that, there was a double feature because they always have double features, but we didn't stay for the second one, so I don't know what it was.
Andrew, say Black Panther in your Forrest Whitaker voice.
What? Do I have a Forrest Whitaker voice?
I was hoping you would try.
Can you say Black Panther in your Bane voice?
I feel like
do Bernie Sanders.
I feel like you're trying to set me up to get canceled, but you know what, Tyler? You can't get canceled anymore. There's more important shit going on.
Yeah, do it. Oh wait, so you're not? I gotcha.
Yeah.
You saw Black Panther and
I don't know what the double feature was because we didn't stay for it. But before that, I saw a double feature of Inside Out and Tomorrowland.
Ooh.
And when I was a kid, I saw a double feature at a drive-in of Die Hard with a Vengeance and Mi Familia.
That's a weird combination, but that's a good combination.
Well, that's the thing about the thing about drive-ins, because you're like, oh, you get 2 movies for the price of one, and it like feels like this special thing. But in reality, the reality of the situation is The first movie is like the big ticket, like real movie that they spent a lot buying the license for, and then the second one is some crap. And Mi Familia is not crappy, but it was a small independent film. But the second one is always some like crappy throwaway thing that you don't care about. And that was like at when I saw Inside Out, it was like Inside Out, and then also Tomorrowland, which was probably dirt cheap to buy the license for because it tanked at the box office. So yeah, I think this is cool. Couple pieces of casting news. There's not really any details to this, but just to throw these in here. So two pieces of Mandalorian casting news. Rosario Dawson has officially been cast as Ahsoka Tano from in the show, which basically, Ahsoka Tano is like a fan favorite character from the Clone Wars show, the animated series that was very popular whenever it was airing, and she's kind of like one of the main characters in the Clone Wars, and so they're now bringing her into the Mandalorian because she's like a kid, she's like a teenager in the show, but they're bringing her into the Mandalorian as an adult, and Rosario Dawson's going to play her, and then also Michael Biehn has been cast in an unspecified role in The Mandalorian season 2. If you don't know,
Bean?
Yes. If you don't know who Michael Biehn is,
then shame on you.
Yeah. First of all, shame on you. Second of all, he the most notable role he's ever played is either Kyle Reese in the Terminator movies, or the first one, and then a cameo in the second one in a deleted scene, or what is his name in Aliens? I'm forgetting what is.
Oh, I can't remember, but
Michael Biehn Aliens character. Character. Dwayne Hicks. He plays Hicks in Aliens. He's in a lot of other stuff, but those are the most notable things. But he's been cast in The Mandalorian.
You should have said best known for either Tombstone.
Well, interestingly enough,
or best Charlie Sheen's best friend in Navy SEALs.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, the connection with the connection with Tombstone is obviously The Mandalorian is. We talked about this when we reviewed the first episode.
That's right.
But it's a western.
Yeah.
And whenever they were shooting The Mandalorian, the sets, because whenever people shoot movies, they're shooting on location in different places, and in order to keep what they're shooting quiet when it's a really big popular thing, they give the sets code names. So that if anyone's like, oh, what are you shooting there? Or like, oh, we're shooting this movie called whatever. And famously, whenever they were shooting Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, the film canisters that they were shipping to movie theaters, and then like the film sets where they were shooting, it was codenamed Blue Harvest. Blue Harvest, which was a reference to a book by Dashiell Hammett called Red Harvest, which is is a seminal film noir novel from the 40s. Dashiell Hammett also wrote The Maltese Falcon, which was made into a movie that starred Humphrey Bogart, which is one of our most like notable pieces of iconography for like detective hard-boiled film noir. But whenever they were shooting The Mandalorian, the sets were codenamed Huckleberry, which is a reference to Tombstone. In Tombstone, Val Kilmer's character Doc Holliday, he says, "I'll be your Huckleberry," or "I'm your Huckleberry," and so there's this reference to Tombstone, and Mandalorian is kind of like paying homage to a lot of different westerns, including Tombstone, and now they've cast an actual character from Tombstone in The Mandalorian.
Love it. I love both casting. Both of them. Wonderful.
Is he the youngest brother? The one that gets shot in the back, spoilers?
Yes.
Wait, in Tombstone?
In Tombstone?
No, he's a villain in Tombstone.
Oh yeah.
wait.
He's the
Wait,
guy.
who is
Yeah,
he?
Michael Biehn is the guy. Whenever they go to have the when they go to have the shootout, and they're in
the
the
OK
town
Corral?
square. Yeah, and then they start firing and they shoot a bunch of people. He's the one that like begs for his life, and then Wyatt Earp's like, "Get in the building" or whatever, and then he goes into the building, and then he gets out his gun, and then he takes a gun from somebody else, and then he starts shooting again. He's the one that's like,
Gotcha.
"Please don't kill me. I have a family."
Yeah.
He's also the one. They're in the bar and they do the fancy. He does this fancy gun trick in front of Val Kilmer, and Val Kilmer does the exact same trick, but with a
Oh wait,
cup of
he
coffee.
he plays Johnny Ringo.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I do like that character.
Last story before we take a quick break. So it's a recent revelation that apparently Steve Carell didn't want to leave The Office.
What?
Yeah.
What?
He did not want to leave The Office when he did, and he kind of was forced to. So, kind of. The story is complicated, but contrary to popular belief, because I think everybody basically is under the assumption that Steve Carell left The Office because his to pursue a movie career, like most people in television do. You either start in television, get really big, and then go and do movies, or try to go and do movies, like David Caruso.
David Hasselhoff.
Well, yeah, him too. But famously, David Caruso got too big for his britches. Was like, screw Law and Order.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go be a movie star. He was in one terrible movie that flopped, and
Two.
then he was like, well, there was one very
Kiss of Death and Jade.
yeah, and then he was like, can I please come back to TV now?
Yeah.
But everyone assumes that Steve Carell was so you basically either start in television, get big, go become a movie star, or try to and fail, or you're a movie star, you get old, your star wanes, and then you go and do TV. So everyone assumed that Steve Carell had left The Office to pursue a movie career, but in reality, what happened was, so Steve Carell played Michael Scott in The Office. He was on for 7 seasons, and then he left the show. And after he left the show, the ratings went on a gradual decline, and the show ended on season 8 or 9. Did it end on season 9?
I thought maybe they did 10.
8.
No,
No,
it's
not
9.
10. You think they did 10?
Let me see.
I think it went for 3 more seasons after Steve Carell left. But they tried to replace him. They did this gimmick after he left where they had a bunch of guest cameos be like replacement bosses. So they had like Jim Carrey and Will Ferrell and all these people like came to be the new boss, and then like some hilarious thing happened that caused them to leave. And then after they were kind of stalling for time to figure out how to do the show. And so after they did that, then they cemented Ed Helms' character Andy as the new boss. And they had this whole story arc of him turning into the main character, or not the main character, but turning into the new manager of the office. And the show, got ended after 3 more seasons. Like I said, it's always been assumed that he left because he was pursuing his movie career. But in reality, what happened was Steve Carell was doing an interview with a BBC radio station during the 7th season, and somebody asked him like how much longer he had on the show, and he kind of said like, I think this might be my last year. And he kind of like, according to this new book that was just published, let's see, when was this book published? So Andy Green's new book about the NBC classic called The Office, The Untold Story of the Greatest Sitcom of the 2000s. This book has a bunch of interviews with cast and crew and a lot of different perspectives on different things about the show. And so in this book, a bunch of people say that basically what happened was in 2010, Steve Carell was doing an interview for the BBC. He implied that season 7 would probably be his last year. And people at NBC heard his comments. And as the show's boom operator and sound mixer Brian Whittle told the book, for the book, their reaction was what ultimately convinced him to leave. He didn't plan on saying it out loud, and he hadn't decided anything. He was kind of thinking out loud, Whittle said, of the interview. Carell noticed how the interview inspired a very muted response from network executives. When he realized he didn't get any kind of response from them, he thought, oh, maybe they don't really care if I leave. Maybe I should go do other things. So I think that made it easier, because when the news broke that he was considering it, the people that are in charge of keeping him there didn't make a big effort to do so until afterward. So basically what happened was he said this in this interview. NBC basically didn't say anything. They didn't go like, oh, hey, you're leaving?
That's crazy. Don't do it.
There was no response. So then Steve Carell was like, I kind of just said that. I wasn't really like thinking, and it kind of came out, but like maybe I should leave. And then his agent went and his contract was coming up, basically, is why this whole thing was being talked about. His agent went to NBC, and they said, hey, make us an offer. We'll do another 3 years. So Steve Carell's position was he was willing to do another 3 years, make us an offer, and they didn't. They made no offer. The deadline for the offer came and went, and NBC didn't say anything. So Steve Carell said, all right, and he left. But he wanted to do 3 more years at minimum.
Really nuts. Yeah, the show really kind of went down when he left, so...
Nina, come here. Come here.
Oh.
What do you think about all this?
Yeah, so I guess the show went down... It went down in quality a lot when he left, so it was kind of awkward for the viewers to watch, and I think it was awkward for the cast members. It felt awkward for a while.
There's some good stuff in there.
There is. I'm amazed that everyone shits on it. It had good stuff when he after he left. Not as great, but
it just started going down.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there. I think that the last season is pretty much all bad. I really
I could see that.
The other 2 seasons, seasons 7 and 8, or 8 and 9. How did you find out the answer to that, Tyler? Of how many seasons there were? How many?
Yeah, it's 9 seasons.
Okay, so there's some good stuff in seasons 7 and 8, and then I think season 9 is, like, in my opinion, just pretty bad.
I agree.
But they did some good stuff in there without him. But ultimately,
James Spader was great.
Yeah, I liked that. What was his name? Robert California.
Robert California.
Yeah,
I liked
California.
I liked Robert California. I liked that story arc. I liked that character. I liked what they did with Andy before they ruined the character when he had to go leave to do the Hangover movies. I liked what they did with him and how they redeemed his character and like turned him. They like very efficiently turned him into a suitable replacement in like 3 episodes. And then he was pretty good for a while. And then whenever he started going to do the Hangover movies, they kind of like ruined his character with the way that they had to write him out. But you know, no matter what good stuff was in there, it's goes without saying that the show just wasn't the same without Steve Carell, and it slowly declined. And it's surprising to me that they just made no effort to keep him, considering that he was basically like the linchpin of the show. It's so bizarre to me.
Yeah, I mean, once you say something like that, people are still emotional creatures. So if him saying like, "Oh, it's my last year," and they're like, all right, if that's what he wants, then that's what it could easily turn into one of those things that are just poor communication. I think it's very weird that he would have said that, even not thinking like that's your job, so why would you say that? But it just seems like it's this whole thing of no one was really talking to each other, nobody knows what anybody wants, and all right, bye. You seem like you want to go, bye.
Yeah, I mean,
and then by then it was too late, and
yeah,
I could see that.
It's hard to put yourself in the shoes and have the perspective of somebody who has been on a show for 7 years and then also has been working in television for decades. But if it was me, just using my own frame of mind right now, number one, I would have never said that I was thinking about leaving the show in an interview. And number two, I wouldn't have been like, oh, they didn't say anything. Maybe they want me to leave. I would have been like, huh, they didn't say anything. Hey, NBC, I'll stay. They didn't,
guys.
They didn't say they wanted me to stay, but they didn't say they wanted me to leave. I'm just going to ride this out until somebody literally fires me. But I guess maybe, your mindset changes whenever you've been on a show for almost a decade.
Well, he's done fine for himself. Him and Ed Helms and Jenna Fisher and what's the guy that plays Jim? What's his name?
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski. They all came out profitable after that show. The rest of the cast, I kind of wonder what's happening with them. But yeah.
I mean, that thing was in reruns and syndication for so long before Netflix. I'm sure they did pretty darn well.
Yeah,
as far as I know their bills are being paid, but I wonder if they're, interested in acting more. Like I always think about the Craig Robinson also did really well, but the guy who played Stanley or
Phyllis,
Phyllis, I've seen her here and there, but it's just those. BJ Novak, who is a talented writer, it's just like, what happened?
Well, I mean, so a couple things. Number one, while I'm sure they're all totally fine financially, there are several cast members on that show, and I think that a lot of shows are like this, where it's like they really lucked out getting on that show, and while that show existed, they could say that they were a main cast member on one of the most popular TV shows ever. But once that show ends, you're not getting work again. Like you were insanely lucky to be on that show, but your type of acting is not in great supply. There's a lot of shows like that. I think, the character who plays the actor who plays Kevin, the actor who plays Phyllis, the actor who plays Stanley, like they didn't leave the office and be like, what's my next huge sitcom that I'm going to be on? They went into the world of doing insurance commercial bit parts and things like that. And there's a lot of shows like that. Like Modern Family is just coming to an end. And we my wife and I watched that show, and we joke a lot about how once again, it's one of the most popular shows in history. And the character, the girl who plays Lily, who is Cam and Mitchell's adopted daughter, she's been on the show pretty much since the second season, and she's grown up on the show. And she's been there. She's a main character. She's in nearly every episode. She has a very large part, but she was a baby whenever she started on the show, and she grew into not a very good actor. She's not a particularly skilled actor, and we joke a lot about the fact that once Modern Family ends, I don't think she's gonna get whole lot of work after that.
Just looking at her, just Googling her right now, I already know what's happening. She's gonna turn into a Madison Pettit. We're gonna see some flat tummy tea. Some
just start utilizing her social media following to try to turn herself into an influencer.
Which is fine too. It's not a bad life to live, I guess.
Who's Madison Pettit?
She was the girl who she was very popular. I mean, she still works, but I mostly know her for her social media stuff. But she was that little girl with the curly hair with the big teeth in the movie with The Rock, when he was trying to be her dad, and she did a lot of Disney.
Game Plan?
He was like a football player, ex-football player. Something like that. Yeah, she was in that, and then she did some Disney Channel stuff. But now that she's kind of out of that, that range, I know her for selling Fabletics on Instagram and Flat Tummy Tea and things like that. So we're at that point in time where
So
if
she's
you're
a
not
bad person, is what you're getting at?
No. But what I'm saying is we're at that point in time too as well. And I keep thinking about it every time I see this Will Arnett commercial on Fox where he's hosting a TV show where Legos or something, where if you don't work as an actor, because you're popular or you have a following or something, you're always going to have a way to be okay. Not to say Will Arnett is a bad actor, but let's say he was a bad actor, but he's still Will Arnett. He'll still be able to host things like Legos, whatever. And if he was a female, then he could be an influencer and be those kind of things. I think we're in that time where, hey, if you don't work anymore, it's all good.
Yeah, I also think of the girl. I don't know her name, but the girl who was like in iCarly. She was Carly's like best friend, and then she went on to do that Sam and Cat show with Ariana Grande, and like basically like that show got canceled, and Ariana Grande went on to be like the biggest celebrity in the world, and the other girl, she's just kind of like become one of those people where she just has like a YouTube channel and she just does like vlogs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens. And I've heard rumors about how she's very talented as an actress, and on that show when she was on iCarly, they would tell her like, "Hey, you can't make you can't make the star look bad." Or when she did that show Sam and Cat, I've never seen it, but it's like, "Hey, you're funnier than them, or you're better than them, so you need to lower your talent and lower your skills on camera so that they could look better." So it's just one of those things.
It's the Diana Ross syndrome.
Diana Ross?
Yep.
Diana Ross, she was the star. She was the one that had the X factor, even though she wasn't as talented as the other members. She wasn't
the best singer, yeah.
Yeah, and so she was sort of put into the front, and she and the other singers were sort of told like you can't upstage her. You have to like lower your singing ability in order to make her stand out. So because she had that like that star power X factor, so the other members of the Supremes were actually more like they were better singers than she was, but she was the star.
It's kind of like what you guys do for me.
Yeah. But luckily you have enough talent, where you're just so far ahead of us that we don't have to.
Yeah, you guys are in my wake.
And really quickly before we take a break, just back on the topic of Will Arnett, and speaking of him, just like utilizing his name notoriety and just kind of being a celebrity, even though he's not like a big movie star or whatever. So if you want to see one of the most painfully awkward things that has ever happened in this world, look up a video. So there was a thing. So they opened up this this Airbnb in New York City several years ago, where they took this New York City loft, and they turned it into the Ninja Turtles lair, like their headquarters. And it was a promotional tie-in with the Ninja Turtles movie that was coming out, Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, the second movie that was the live-action Ninja Turtles movies that were produced by Michael Bay. And so they turned this New York City loft into the Ninja Turtles lair, and they offered it as an Airbnb. So anybody could just go and get this as an Airbnb. And they were only charging $10 a night. But obviously it was insanely like high demand for it, so it was like impossible to get a night in it. And there was also a contest that they did where one of the people who got a night was entered into a sweepstakes, and the winner of this sweepstakes was given this special package where they got to stay a night in the Ninja Turtles Airbnb lair, and then they got this special thing where a cast member from Ninja Turtles would come to the place and talk to them, and they would have a pizza party. So this family, the most New Jersey family you've ever seen in your life, won. And it was literally like these two like just dark-skinned, dark-tanned Jersey Shore people who were just literally like, yo, I won this Ninja Turtle thing. I love the Ninja Turtles from when I was a kid. I'm gonna come and stay in this Ninja Turtle house with my wife. She's super hot. And they had a little kid who was literally just a mini Jersey Shore guy who was like, yo,
yeah, I can't fucking wait to go there.
Yeah, it was literally. And so this family won, and so there's a video of this family going to this place, and then Will Arnett coming to hang out with them, and because Will Arnett was in the Ninja Turtles movies, he played Vern, the cameraman,
like him and Megan Fox or something.
Yeah, and
Sorry?
So I implore you, go look up this video and watch it, because you have Will Arnett showing up. These people have no idea who he is. Number one, they don't even know that the movie exists. Like they don't know there's Ninja Turtles movies. They just know about Ninja Turtles from, Ninja Turtles, just the existence of it. The guy talks about how he loved Ninja Turtles when he was a kid. So they very clearly don't care about this movie at all. They're just a working class New Jersey family who won this contest. They have no idea who Will Arnett is. They have no idea why he's here or what he has to do with the Ninja Turtles. And it's the most awkward thing you'll ever see in your life. Please go watch it.
I'm gonna go check that.
And on that note, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna do our regular segment. Can you go for that?
After these messages, we'll be right back.
And we're back. And now it's time for a regular segment where we talk about rumors and unsubstantiated nostalgic news and give our opinions about whether we think it's a good idea or not. The segment is called Can You Go For That? Oh, oh, oh. Oh, can you go for that? Oh, can you go for that? Oh, oh, oh.
Sure.
Can you go for that? Can you go for that? Can you go for that?
All right, we're going for it.
Got a couple stories here on a very RDJ themed edition of Can You Go For That? First story, Marvel and Robert Downey Jr. have reportedly made a deal for an MCU return. Tony Stark might have sacrificed his life to destroy Thanos in Avengers Endgame, but this is the Marvel Universe we're talking about, so there's always ways for Iron Man to return in the future of the MCU. We've already heard a few reports on the ongoing saga of the studio's attempts to coax Robert Downey Jr. back for another go-round as the Armored Avenger for the past few months, and we've now got hold of a positive update on this situation. As we previously told you, Downey Jr. was asking for a hefty payday to return as Iron Man. However, the total failure of Doolittle, his first post-Marvel movie that he had a lot of creative control over, had shifted his position somewhat and made him more willing to renegotiate his terms. And according to sources, the two sides have now come to an agreement, and while nothing's been officially signed and sealed just yet, a deal is currently in place for RDJ to return to the MCU. From what we understand, Downey Jr. has lowered his price to a more reasonable figure recently, something that Marvel is more comfortable with. And right now, it's looking pretty likely that the actor will return in the Ironheart TV show, which is reportedly to be an early development. Pepper Potts is believed to be appearing in the series too, as per Downey Jr.'s wish to only return if Gwyneth Paltrow does as well. So Ironheart is a character created in the comics by Brian Michael Bendis, who also created Miles Morales / Ultimate Spider-Man / the main character from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. He created Ironheart, which is a character named Riri Williams, who is a teenage black girl who becomes the new Iron Man. And they're developing a TV show based on it called Ironheart. And basically what Robert Downey Jr. would allegedly play in the show is the voice of her suit, because in Ironheart, you know how in the Marvel movies Iron Man has Jarvis, the voice that talks to him. That's like the AI that controls all of his technology. And Jarvis ends up becoming Vision. In Ironheart, the artificial intelligence that talks to Riri Williams is Tony Stark, is an AI version of Tony Stark. So he'd be the voice of her suit, basically.
So he wouldn't make a physical appearance. It'll all be voiceover.
He might in some capacity, like maybe flashbacks or something like that, but ultimately the main glut of what this proposed role would be is the voice of her suit.
That changes a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I can go for that. Gonna hit you with them caveats.
Oh, hit me with the talkies.
Hit you with the talkies. So
Oh man, I miss those talkies.
Oh man, all those talkies all day.
Hot Cheetos and Takis?
I can get enough of these hot Cheetos and Takis.
I can't believe you know that.
Yeah, it's a jam. It slaps. I can go for that, but only if it's him doing the voice. This whole time I was going to say, no, stop it. I can't go for that. And then you mentioned, oh, he'd be the voice of the suit. And I was like, yeah, that sounds right. It sounds fun. It sounds like something I want from Robert Downey Jr. I just want him to be quippy. I don't want him coming back to life or like, oh, we saved you, or we did a thing and now you're alive. And I don't want any like prequel thing. I like him as the voice. It makes sense. I can go for that.
Speaking of which, if you've ever seen the audition tape for Robert Downey Jr. auditioning for Iron Man, it's on YouTube. Look it up. Just Iron Man audition tape, Robert Downey Jr. If you watch that, you're like, he earned this role. That dude,
100%.
That dude is quipping his pants off. He had to tone it down for the real movie. You watch this audition, yeah. If you watch this audition tape, you're like, man, he dialed it down from like 100 to like 60%. Like he is
good actor, very talented.
It's some of the craziest fast talking I've ever seen in a movie, where you can actually understand what he's saying.
Wow. I can go for that. Obviously, I love RDJ, and I want to hear him at least, see him at best. But
that's delightful.
But I'm more excited that Gwyneth Paltrow is going to be doing something other than producing Netflix content.
Misinformation about health and wellness.
I want this, like, it's obviously like if she has a job, it's going to be her like mentoring this new, because she's rescue. She knows how to use the suits. She's probably going to be teaching this young girl how to use the suits. But also, I would love it if she just started slipping random like goop facts into it. It's like, all right, you have your mask. You make sure to use your repulsor blasters. Here's your jade egg. You know where that goes. And it's like
Pepper Potts puts out a candle that smells like a vagina.
Oh God.
I say
It's called My Pepper Pot.
Oh. I say I can go for that. I think it's interesting that he's bringing he's tying himself along with Gwyneth Paltrow, which I'm surprised at, because I know that every time you can hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
You cut out for a second. You're good now.
I can hear you now. You went in and out for a sec, but now I can hear you.
I know every time he talks coming back, he doesn't talk about Gwyneth as much as he talks about the young guy that plays Spider-Man. That seems to be the guy that has his heart and his affection. So it's kind of random, but at the same time, it's not a big role. You know, just having the voice, I think, would be interesting, because technically he could still be dead. And I don't know, honestly, how much of an impact that could have as far as making the show really big. But I do have a caveat.
Gonna hit some caveats?
Hit it.
Yes. And this is kind of not something that's direct with him, but I would like, if he could, have the girl who's playing, what is her name? Ironheart?
Yeah, Riri
Be-
Williams.
A dark-skinned girl. I wish if he could fight for something, I would like for that, because like it's cool that she's a black girl, but if she could not be like an obvious Instagram pretty type girl, but like a real person, that would be that bring him back for everything if he could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will no longer stand for the Halle Berryfication of our dark-skinned actors.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm joking, but I mean that was
obviously-
the whole thing. Was Halle Berry was cast as Storm in the X-Men movies, and Storm is like a straight up just like dark-skinned African woman.
Yeah.
And I looked at the images
now-
of Ironheart, and she is a dark-skinned girl. Well, she looks kind
What?
of Dominican, but yeah, Dominican. Ironheart. When I looked up the images of what she looked like, she is a dark-skinned girl. She kind of has the curly hair, so
Yeah.
she looks a little bit more Dominican-ish, but still, she's dark.
Yeah. This is a weird one. I can go for that. I guess in the context of like thinking like the teasing or the clickbait of Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU. Obviously the thing that you think of when you hear that is that they're going to bring back Iron Man. Like, you're going to bring back Tony Stark. He's going to come back to life, or it's going to be an alternate, a Tony Stark from a different universe that comes into the main universe or something like that. So then when you hear that, oh, it's just him as a voice in an AI, like, that's obviously a letdown from the promise of what that implies. So it almost like in the way that it's framed, it automatically frames itself as a disappointment, because you're obviously going to assume other things, bigger implications. But if you strip that away and just get rid of that assumption and get rid of that whole framing of it and just think of it as what it is, which is they're going to have Robert Downey Jr. be the voice of the AI in the Ironheart suit as Tony Stark, an AI version of him. Just get rid of all of that preconceived notion of thinking that they're talking about Iron Man coming back to the Marvel movies, back to the Avengers. Then yeah, sure, that sounds cool. It's not like a huge deal. It's just a cool little thing. So yeah, I can go for that. But wait a minute. There's more.
Oh no.
WB is reportedly offering Robert Downey Jr. a huge payday to join the DC universe.
Oh!
This is a bigger switch of sides than the guy who was on Verizon and then went to Sprint.
This is a bigger switch of sides than Rachel Dolezal.
Damn, that's crazy.
It looks you listeners out there can't hear and viewers out there can't see because it doesn't translate to the recorded video, but on this Skype call you can send people emojis, and Kirk is slow clapping me. That's why I keep laughing. It looks like Marvel might have to act quickly if they want to finalize Tony Stark's second coming, though, because we've now heard from sources that Warner Brothers and DC are said to be considering the idea of making Downey Jr. a very lucrative offer to join their own comic book universe. We couldn't get an exact figure from our source, but we're told it'd be similar to the kind of money he was taking from some of his later MCU movies. And even if he did decide to work with them, it wouldn't necessarily rule out a return to Marvel at some point. So there's that.
I like it.
DC is trying to snipe RDJ from Marvel, bring him into the DC universe. Sloppy seconds.
That is so corny.
And I don't even know what I'm trying to think of what Robert Downey Jr. could play in the DC universe. Like,
How tall is he?
Batman is basically the DC version of Iron Man. It's not an exact 1-to-1, but that's kind of what DC's version of Iron Man is. But I don't think... I mean, they already have a Batman and also I don't think that RDJ has the right energy for Bruce Wayne.
No.
I'm trying to think of what he could play in the DC universe.
Well, wait. While you think of it, let me give my thoughts, because either way, no matter what he plays, I can go for that. Because that's such a wonderful... fuck you. Yeah, I make my money. I don't care. I love that. It's not going to happen. It's probably fake. But just the idea of him going, yeah, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to go to DC. Where's the paycheck? Sounds good. Who do you want me to play? I don't care. It's fine. I'm Robert Downey Jr. I can do it all. I love that.
It's not unprecedented.
Yeah.
It's happened before. Ryan Reynolds...
In comic books? Oh, yeah.
Ryan Reynolds played the Green Lantern. Like, literally the first movie in the DC Universe franchise that, like, kick-started it. He played the Green Lantern, and then now he's Deadpool in Marvel.
Yeah, but it's slightly different because that tank's so bad. Maybe if it done well, it would have been a little different, but...
Yeah.
You know who
because
did
it
it? You know
tanks
who
so bad,
did it
but-
first? That Chris fella. He was in Fantastic
Well, that's a little different.
Four.
Yeah, that's a little different though, because
Those are
that's
both
still
Marvel.
still Marvel, but
I forgot.
it's Fox Marvel. Chris Evans
okay.
played Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four Fox movies, and then he's Captain America, and
And he was fantastic.
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan was Johnny Storm
favorite,
in the reboot Fantastic Four movie, and then he played Killmonger in Black Panther.
But on
Yeah,
this
I
big
guess
of a
so.
scale, this seems to be a bigger scale, and I'm down. I can go for that.
Tyler?
I can, absolutely. I love it. I want him to be like, I would love it if he was somehow the new Magneto, but that's not going to happen, obviously. So I would
I
say
mean,
that, like,
that's still Marvel.
what? Oh,
That's
I'm
still
sorry. Shit.
He's gonna be
No,
the
I-
new Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
there we go.
There you go.
When they
That'd be perfect.
reboot Suicide Squad again,
You know,
Yeah.
if they
And
made,
they're like, we need a man to do this.
if they made,
and then it's hugely popular, and everyone's like, feminism
That'd be
has
so
ended.
sad.
shit, that would be crazy. But if he played like a major villain too, like the Riddler, I think he could do a really good Riddler. And if they flesh it out to make him more of just like, instead of just like a throwaway jokey character, he could have.
I had the
jokey
Riddler.
time.
I had the Riddler in my mind as like it's not something I'm chomping in the bit for, but it could work.
Yeah.
I can't go for that. What works for some people is not always going to work for you. You know, just because he's wildly popular as Iron Man, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to just take that formula and put him in your universe. I also wonder about non-compete clauses. I just have a lot of. It just makes me like. I just don't see it. Like, I think that's so corny. Like, oh, it worked for them. Maybe it'll work for us. Like, that's just stupid. You have to figure it out on your own. And then what happens when he comes over and then we watch it and we say, this doesn't feel right, you know? And he's also Iron Man. Iron Man has been this huge staple character for the past 12 years. And then to bring him right on over to the other side, I just feel like it wouldn't do very well for DC. It wouldn't do very well for Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, he'll make some money and people will go watch it, but after a while, people will feel like it was a little bit cheap, like a cop out.
Yeah, and I mean you've got a point. Like, there's got to be some kind of non-compete type situation going on in his contract, because these non-compete clauses, or studios trying not to dilute their brand by their actors doing similar things. Like, some of these things, they get pretty crazy with them. Like, there's a section in the contract for any actor who plays James Bond that while they are playing James Bond, they're not allowed to appear in any other movie wearing a tuxedo.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Wow.
It makes sense.
So
Insane.
yeah. So you know, I feel like Marvel has got to have something in the contracts about this. I mean, obviously it's got to lapse at some point, but he just left the franchise.
And just by like, I mean, he still had a small role in the last Spider-Man movie. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't go for that. Like, number one, if I love Robert Downey Jr. If he's gonna keep doing stuff, either get him back as Iron Man, the role that defined him, one of his best roles, or let him do some other stuff. Let him do some other original movies. I don't want him in these. Yeah, Doolittle 2. I don't want him in these. I don't want him in these crappy DC movies. Screw that.
I was just thinking about that too. Is like what's his name? Not Elijah Wood, but the other guy that looks like Harry Potter. He plays Harry Potter. Sorry.
Oh, Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe easily could have done like wizard related things or all that stuff, but he branched out and now like I recently watched Guns Akimbo and that shit is amazing. It's
I haven't
so
seen it
good.
yet.
But like I think Robert Downey Jr. could have done it way better if he just done more original movies over the next 3 years and then come back to Disney and he could have still asked for whatever he wanted when he decided to come back. But
yeah,
he had one flop and then he was afraid to try anything else, it seems like.
Yeah, I haven't seen Guns Akimbo, but I have seen the memes where it's like what I thought my apocalypse outfit was gonna be, and then it's like this badass guy in like riot gear, and like what it actually is, and it's that screenshot of Daniel Radcliffe in the bathrobe with like the guns. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't go for that. You know, just do some other stuff. You guys ever seen The Singing Detective?
Yeah, the Mel Gibson movie.
No.
He directed it, right?
Did he direct it? Maybe.
Yeah.
The Singing Detective. No, that's the original radio serial it was based on. Directed by Keith Gordon. What are you talking about, Kurt?
Oh, he's good too.
Yeah, 2003 musical crime comedy film directed by Keith Gordon, loosely based on the BBC serial of the same name. A work by British writer Dennis Porter. It stars Robert Downey Jr. and features a sporting cast that includes Katie Holmes,
it's
Adrian
Mel
Brody.
Gibson produced it. Mm-hmm.
Ah, there we go.
That was what it was.
Suffering from the skin disease psoriasis. That's kind of a pun. It's like you have psoriasis and then you become a pariah. Suffering from the skin disease psoriasis and crippling psoriasis arthritis, detective novelist Dan Dark is in such pain in a hospital that he begins to delve into fantasy, resulting in several storylines told simultaneously. Check this movie out. Pre-Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., back when he was just that guy who did some movies in the 80s and then got into a bunch of trouble and got on drugs and went to prison. It's a good movie. Really interesting.
He's a very talented actor, and he's also a very, very lucky one too, because I used to really not like him right before Tropic Thunder, because I just felt like as a guy who just did so much messing up and he was a liability to all these sets that he worked on, they could have just given the roles to other people. But he is so talented and so good. And so
Disney's muting us.
That, like,
they're silencing our message.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love you, Disney. I wrote all of my papers about you in my program, so don't do that to me. But yeah, and then after watching Tropic Thunder and being like, well, damn, he's actually amazing. So I get it, you know. Lucky guy.
Yeah. So this has been another edition of Can You Go For That? Oh, oh, oh. Oh, can you go for that? Oh, oh, oh. Oh, can you go for that? Oh, oh, oh. Oh, can you go for that? Can you go for that? Can you go for that? Last couple stories before we wrap up. Not to end on a down note or anything like that, but R.I.P. Stuart Gordon, cult classic horror director, dead at 72. Stuart Gordon, best known as the filmmaker behind such cult classics as Reanimator and From Beyond, has died of multiple organ failure. His family confirmed to Variety Tuesday night. He was 72. Although best known for his seminal work in independent horror, Gordon had a varied career that included founding the Organic Theater Company with his wife, Carolyn Purdy Gordon, the Bleacher Bum, the Organic premiered such prominent works as David Mamet's Sexual Perversity in Chicago and Bleacher Bums, which starred Dennis Franz and Joe Mantegna. He was a co-creator of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise, for which he shared a story credit, and produced the film's sequel and directed an episode of the TV spinoff. In 2005, he directed a film adaptation of Mamet's Edmund, starring William H. Macy. Other films include Fortress, Castle Freak, and King of the Ants. So he's a really prominent indie horror director. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend checking out Reanimator, one of the greatest horror movies of all time, horror comedies, kind of a zombie movie. It's great. Also, not mentioned in here, in a very lesser known movie, but another weird movie he directed that I'd highly recommend checking out, Space Truckers.
What was it again?
Space Truckers.
Oh, I've heard that. That.
Dennis Hopper's in it. And then last story, R.I.P. the gambler, Kenny Rogers. Dead at 81.
He knew when to fold them.
Yep. He knew when to hold them. He knew when to fold them. But I will always be more fond of Islands in the Stream. That is what we are. No one in between. Now, come on, Kirk. You don't like country music, but that is a bop. That's a banger.
That's a pop song. That's not country. That's a pop song. But it's
the
good
Nashville sound. It's the Nashville sound. It's the pop country Nashville sound.
It's
that was
watered
established in
down.
the 80s. Vocalist Kenny Rogers, who dominated the pop country charts in the 1970s and 80s with a string of sleekly tailored hits that won 3 Grammys, has died. He was 81. Rogers passed away peacefully at home from natural causes under the care of hospice and surrounded by his family. A representative for the singer said in a statement, "Due to the national COVID-19 emergency, the family is planning a small private service at this time with a public memorial planned for a later date." Rogers had announced a farewell tour in 2015 and was able to keep it going through December 2017. In April 2018, shortly before he was to spend a few months finishing out the tour after a break, he announced that he was having to call off the remaining dates due to unspecified health challenges. "I didn't want to take forever to retire," Rogers said in his April 2018 statement. "I've thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to say farewell to the fans over the course of the past 2 years on the Gamblers Last Deal tour. I could never properly thank them for the encouragement and support they've given me throughout my career and the happiness I've experienced as a result of that." R.I.P. Kenny Rogers. And also, it's notable to point out that neither of these deaths were as a result of the coronavirus, or so we think. The families claim that they were not, but maybe this becomes a situation where people start hiding that and claiming other causes of death because of the stigma attached to it. We saw a similar situation at the height of the AIDS epidemic, where celebrities would quietly go away and die from AIDS, but then their families would say that they died from cancer or something because of the stigma attached to it, and because of the highly politicized nature of the coronavirus, the fact that a lot of people have a lot of vested interest in downplaying the severity of the virus and trying to convince people that they need to go back to work and stop quarantining. we might see some people who are downplaying the virus and dying, but then their families lie and say that they die from some other reason because they don't want to
Look wrong.
continue.
Look
What?
wrong.
They don't want to look wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, that R.I.P. So yeah, that's it. That's the show. If you like what you hear and you haven't done so already, please subscribe. If you have a friend you think would enjoy the show and they haven't heard it already, share it. If you want to
All
keep
of
up to date
Dave's
with
followers follow us and listen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If you like the show and you want to keep up to date with us, you can join our Facebook page, the Nostalgia Facebook page. You can join our Facebook group, the Nostalgia Facebook group. If you have any thoughts, questions, concerns that you want read on the show, you can email us at nostalgicastpod@gmail.com. Yeah, stay safe out there. Follow the recommended CDC guidelines during this crisis. And once again, I'll extend the invitation. If you want to email us and let us know what you're doing to keep busy during the quarantine, email us at nostalgicastpod@gmail.com, and we will read your email on the air. Thanks for listening.
Fucking Skype